experimental paper and clay show. My name is Ramirez. I'm the executive director here. This is an inaugural show that we're having here. We've never done this before, but my thought process was we usually have a sculpture show every year, but in order to change things up a little bit, I thought maybe we can do a sculpture show biannually, and in the interim years, do a focused sculpture show. So that's what this show is. Paper and clay was my first idea, so that's how we landed here. And a little bit, I just want to let Lisa and Deborah tell you a little bit about themselves, and then we'll get to some questions. We put out a call to all the artists that were in the show. We had 60 people that are exhibiting right now in the show and about 20 that were rejected. We sent an email to all of them inviting them to please send a question for the jurors so that we can all have a discussion about what it takes to jury a show, what the thought processes are, and this is going to be a very informal sort of conversation. So we'll ask the question, let these ladies talk, and then if you guys have a question right then and there, raise your hand and let's talk about it. All right? So Lisa, Deborah, a little bit about yourself and then we'll start.
I am Lisa Naples, and I am a ceramic artist, and I have a teaching studio in Frenchtown, New Jersey, just up there a little bit, where I serve, during the school year, about 70 people a week come through to take classes. So it's a vibrant place, and I think it's an open studio, so it's a community. It becomes kind of a community hub, which is lovely, as a way of making a living, but also being an artist is an isolating endeavor, and so for me it's community too. Even if I'm just in my back studio and I can just hear people out there, I don't even need to, it serves a lot of different purposes. And all I want to say about being invited to jury this is that I think that it was I've just gotten to know Christine a little bit in the last year or so, and it feels like such a responsibility to jury a show. In a way, it's a responsibility to be clear and honest. But for Nouveau Arts in particular, it's an invitation to be inclusive while still being clear and honest. So it's been really amazing to be part of this. I've enjoyed it start to finish. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm Deborah Bruns-Thomas, and I'm primarily a painter, but my work in my studio has taken me in a number of different two-dimensional directions. So working in paper for a great number of years, creating pieces out of the paper that tea bags are made out of, so kind of having a recycling idea to my work. And drawing and working on the paper is something that goes and feeds my paintings. So it's this conversation that happens in my studio. But I've taught for nearly 10 years as an adjunct in 3 universities in Philadelphia, Moore, Drexel, and what is now Jefferson University. And now I base my studio in Bucks County, and carrying on with what Lisa has mentioned about community. That was a community that Anne trained with Lisa years ago when she had her Elephant Eye tour, and I remember seeing signs when that show would go up, and how do I get to know those people? So our universities were meant to kind of collide.
Yeah.
So,
Just to that point, you saw some signs and you had that like your heart, well, how do I get to know those people? And I just love that, Christine, you had this idea to have this talk. It's so unconventional, and even if one person has something that they might get out of it, and that they get that, that's community. And we're all in the same boat. Like we all need each other. So I'm really happy to be here with all of you. Just as
they thought about everything that they looked at and why they chose some pieces and didn't choose other pieces. And I think it's really important for artists to get that feedback. And this is something I would love to do for every show. We'll see how that goes. But this is the first time we're doing it, and I think it's just such an important, and I'm recording it for those that can't be here, so we'll have a YouTube link. But just to have a conversation between artists and the people that are selecting their work, because a lot of times they just get a rejection notice and nothing ever comes of it, and they just are left wondering. So we wanted to give them that opportunity. So a lot of these questions are from artists. Like I said, a lot of them aren't here, but but let's talk about it. I have divvied them up into categories. The first one is just the general jurying process. And the first question was, can you describe your process when reviewing submissions? What do you look at first? The materials, the form, the artist statement, or something else?
Well, so I would have to say, so this is my first experience as a juror, but my experience in jurying processes, I was more on the administrative side, so more like with you and Stephanie, organizing material, and that was when I worked at the Philadelphia Art Alliance, and so I kind of got to observe what the jurors would, how they went about it. And so for being my own experience, I kind of had that in the back of my mind. But my instinct is I want to see the work. I just want to look at the images, and I just want to try to connect with the image that's on the screen. And it's an interesting process because you were able to provide us with a large screen format, which I hope happens in other situations too. So I think that helps versus a small screen. And then from there, I think that informed any questions that I had. Materials where sometimes I could tell that it was her, but sometimes a few pieces.
Yeah, we were confused by the pieces.
Yeah.
Well, and just so everybody knows, the way Stephanie and I set it up is that we bring up a large monitor, like a large TV monitor, maybe 45, 50 inches, and we hook it up to a laptop, and we put just the images up on the screen. It's a blind jury process, so the jurors never know the artist's name. If they want to, we tell them the title and the materials, and if they want to read into the artist statement, if they need more information, then we go into the artist statement or the bio or whatever, if we're seeking more information other than just looking at the piece itself. So we present them with just the images first. So that is, I think by and large that is the most important thing we're looking at.
Right? And there were up to 5 images.
Yep.
So maybe even with details. So maybe there were more than 5 images for
10, yeah. Everybody can submit up to 5 pieces with a detail. So 10 images if everybody's, puts in 5. But some people only submit 1 or 2, some people,
Yeah, so seeing how that group of objects holds together thematically, or not even, doesn't have to hold together thematically, but sort of the integrity
Yeah.
and the intention.
Mm-hmm.
That is very telling, to me. But it's about the work, and it's taking in overall that. And so the images become very important, the quality of the images. And I'm just going to say that right off the bat, because we had a lot of, when your quality of images aren't good, and you're taking your own images, sometimes people are taking their own images, which is, not advisable, because you can't be objective. And so, I just wanted to throw out that the quality of the images and the readability, legibility of the images is so important we only can see, that's what we see. And so if we're having trouble reading the image, we're not seeing your work, you know? I did want to mention, just because I keep getting these ads for this folio, I think it's Folio 4 by Orange Monkey is the name of the company. It's a light box. I take my work to Conshohocken. I've been using the same photographer for at least 25 years. And I didn't look for somebody who does art work. I didn't look for a photographer who photographs art. I looked for a photographer who could make nuts and bolts look sexy. Like I looked for somebody who could make an object that was not inherently beautiful look beautiful. And this guy worked, Pep Boys was one of his clients, and he's just a genius at this. You know? So I'm just mentioning Folio 4 because for people who can't afford to go to a professional photographer, understandable, especially in the early days. But this is a game changer. This light box thing. It's really done a decent job to get you started.
Yeah, I mean, quality means not having distractions, exterior distractions in the field.
The difference of the photographs, I mean, I've been doing this here for 20 years and jurying the shows before I became the director. I worked with Carol and was the exhibition specialist, and we juried every show. And the amount of people that just throw their piece in the grass and take a picture, or in their studio with their stuff behind it, or, you know, I always try to tell artists if you can at least, at the very, very least, throw a white sheet behind it, something so that it's not so distracting. But we still, to this day, get people that just don't understand how important the photograph is. And the quality of the photograph, right? So there were some that we could blow up really, and we could really get in there and see the detail.
Yeah.
And there were some that showed up on a large screen TV this big, and we weren't able to zoom in. So
The file size was just.
yeah, the file size was just teeny tiny.
I'm sure you gave that specification.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a teacher once who, during the show, the Fleischer challenge shows back in the day, at Fleischer Art Memorial in Philadelphia, he juried it, and I had applied, and came to me afterwards and said, I couldn't even go back to you. Your stuff showed up, and you have seconds to get the attention of the jury. Seconds. And if your images aren't 100% top quality, it just goes to the next slide. You know? So he said, I didn't have a chance to go back for you because your images weren't good enough. So that's probably when I started having a professional shot. And that, you know, it's not necessary when you're in the very beginning of your career, but it's really an investment in yourself.
And quite frankly, we were very lenient when it comes to that. There are other organizations that will absolutely reject people just because their photographs aren't good enough.
And the opposite is that you can get really mediocre work into shows if your images are top notch. Because you can make a nut and a bolt look great. So that's really clever.
Question, for something you said, Deborah. You said that you're looking for pieces that you connect with, or that you feel a connection to. So, are you looking at the pieces for your personal connection, or does it enter your mind, oh, what will other people connect with? And are you thinking of people in general and a variety, or you tend to be going for a certain look or feel?
Yeah, no, to clarify that, I picked up on that word. No, I'm trying to, because it's we're looking through a filter, which is the screen, and the work isn't in my space. And so I'm trying to just, like I probably would with a book or a movie
question about the jury process?
Yeah.
So, you have 2 jurors,
Yes.
and do they look at everything at the same time? Are they looking at it separately and then saying yay or nay, and then you compare their responses?
Together. We all sit
Oh,
together.
you're all together.
We all have a dialogue pretty
Mhm.
much about every piece. Yeah.
It's a great question though.
It is.
It really begs the question, your question begs the question when you get a different result, if everybody looks at it honestly. Probably.
I think
to some
we
extent.
would. There was a period of time, it might have been when Robin was here, but we used to jury by a number, 5 down to 1, and then we would add them all up. And that for me just, first of all, is too much math. I have an art brain. But also it took away the dialogue of like talking about why somebody liked it versus why the other one didn't like it, and having that opportunity to maybe talk each other into, you know, loving it or not liking it, or why they think it's good. I just felt like it was too cold of a process for me.
And
So
I
that's-
see that numbering system tries to be dispassionate
Yeah.
and objective.
And then you're like, oh, well, this one got a 2.5, and should we accept a 2.5 or just a 3? And it was like, it didn't work as well.
Can I offer another perspective?
Yeah.
So for a long time in my career, I had to do not hard work, but other work, and pare it down from a large group to a small group.
Mm-hmm.
And we would do that 1 through 5, but we would discuss the things that were different. So if you thought it was a 1, right, and both of you thought it was a 4 or 5, that would be when we absolutely would discuss to
Yes.
understand what are you seeing.
That was what would happen
And
when we did
you
that.
could really, you
Mhm.
could winnow it down to the 20% very quickly.
Mhm.
Maybe.
We kind of do that now without the numbers. We have absolute yes, absolute no, and maybe. Sometimes we all look at a slide and we all say absolute no, like, and then you just move on. There's nothing to discuss. It's, you know, it's the maybes or the, you know.
I think that's
But that's a
that's
really,
a wonderful process.
Yes, it is.
Because if I was a 1 and you guys were 4s and 5s or something, I would be
Interesting.
I would enjoy that conversation. Because it's not so much
I
about.
mean, it kind of
what-
happened with us.
It happens a couple times.
Yeah.
And it's not so much about liking a piece or not liking a piece. That language is difficult for me because it's really about searching for integrity. Integrity in the message.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't all about content, although there's content in every single thing there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, is it coming across? Are you connecting to it?
Yeah.
You know, it's so hard to put words to what that metric is. But the conversation, you know, could at least be edifying, especially if it was a paper, something with paper. I was very keen to hear what Deborah would have to say in support of a
Yeah.
piece. It was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Because working for a long time in a medium, you really do, you see it all. You know it, because you've seen it in the field, and so when you see something that's unusual, especially when it really jumps out, that's something that's novel, it's definitely going to jump out. But something that might not be novel, but it's just really well done, also jumps out.
Well, in this vein, I have 15 questions. This is still question 1.
Oh, it is? Yeah, I
So
thought we might
I'm
get
gonna
to
try to read and, you know, take some out, but there is this question that I think is interesting if we can come up with an answer fairly quickly. Was there a particular piece or moment in the jurying process that challenged your thinking or sparked a discussion between you?
You have an idea of what
I
that
think,
moment
well,
was?
there were 2.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There were a couple moments, I just am not remembering what it. Maybe the frame paper piece?
Mm-hmm.
That artist was one?
Yes.
Sometimes it was about, does this qualify, and this is another question,
Right.
does this qualify according to the criteria that you set?
Yeah,
Which was, we kind of got we got some of that out of the way with the ceramic, but the clay part, and the conversation happened before the jury even. So we decided not to include theme
the fact that it really is part of the piece. The ripped up pieces of paper are part of the piece. They're not just the base for the drawing that's on top of the painting.
Yes, and that goes back to what we were talking about earlier about, feeling connected to the work, trying, the integrity, feeling connected, trying to like understand what the image is offering to us. And yeah, we sort of developed this discussion around it of process. I mean, we talked about process quite a bit during the jury process. In order to
I would
try
say
to understand the piece.
It was the paper component of the show that gave us the most trouble.
Yeah.
Was trying to like, oh gosh, did we not explain it well enough? Did we?
But you would expect that too, because it's not, I mean, ceramics is like yoga.
Yeah.
A lot of people are making ceramics these days, but not a lot of people are working with paper as
Solely.
the material.
Yeah, solely.
Yeah.
As a medium.
Yeah.
So I think that makes sense in that way. Right.
Good. Moving on to the next category, which is the theme-specific elemental paper and clay. What did the theme elemental paper and clay mean to each of you? How did you interpret it as you made selections?
I'll just be really honest. It was a good title. Like, we're integrating paper and clay, which is something you wanted to do. And as I looked online, a lot of people want to do that. It's like not that. It's not that unusual to see a show that includes paper and clay. So, I mean, it's not common, but it has been done. So there's an interest in putting these two materials together, and it was just a title that worked. I mean, we were spitballing ideas and came up with that one. And it was like elemental, right? So
Yeah. Of the elements of the earth. Yeah.
but it didn't influence anything in regards to the jury, of course.
Right.
I don't think so, no. I mean, I just think I like that, you think in your description you used the word poetic. There's this, kind of poetry between the materials. And I like that you used that word because I used that word once in describing a class that I'm going to teach at Lisa's studio. And I think it must be a very elusive word that people don't quite completely understand, because I remember receiving a question like, what are you about, drawing is poetic. So, but yeah, I think it's about just dialogue between the two materials. They both require a certain amount of water also to make it work. And the clay, I guess, having the water be extracted from, or the piece has to be dry.
And you can even put paper in that. I don't know if I have any paper clay.
Yeah.
Doings.
Oh yeah,
Doing.
So, yeah, they definitely speak to each other. These materials.
Good. Were there specific qualities or innovations in the use of paper or clay that stood out to you with these particular pieces? Innovations.
This is just coming to mind. All the way over there in the corner, I don't remember the artist's name. I think you mentioned that after we decided to include them that it was a young person. It's about two vessels, and they're very much referencing vessel, but they're not trying to be functional. They're very sophisticated. I see them as being like the seeds of something that could be taken very far. And then you said that this person is young, which only made me more eager to include them. They were already included, it wasn't criteria or something that pushed me over. So innovative. Yeah, I see that person working from their guts.
Yes.
And especially if they're young, they're like, the chance of selling stuff like that is, not great. And so it's pure, something pure about that. So I have a lot of respect for that, because you can't really put that pressure on work, or you start making compromises that make you grumpy. Make me grumpy. So I just realized
small pieces that
No.
are incorporating seed fiber or
I'm just gonna point at them.
Yeah.
So like a white on
The vessels. There's a little tiny vessel,
Oh, okay.
and then the larger vessel.
Okay, yes.
But that particular conversation that we had fascinated me because as a professional play person, I thought that you would look at that and be like, to me, it looked very amateurish until you gave me your perspective, and I was like, and I know this artist, and I know she's a thinker, she's a very deep thinker, and she's a great artist, so I was surprised by it when I saw the images, but then when you spoke about it so highly, I was like, oh my gosh, okay.
So that's done on purpose. That goes back to what Deborah was saying about connecting to the piece, right? So, and because we're both bringing to this jurying experience a lot of years of experience in the fields, in the respective fields, that's what I mean. Like I've seen so much, and I see a lot, especially nowadays, with social media, which didn't exist when I was a young potter. It gives people the chance to sort of. I just see like a classroom where everybody's looking at everybody else's. It could be really, really well made, but it's derivative of everything else that's being made right now.
Yeah,
Not that.
right.
And a singular voice. So that's the integrity and following some internal
Well, it's exciting.
guidance,
It's exciting to see somebody outside.
stepping out.
And not in Loveland.
Yeah. And it's not even about skilled or unskilled, like it's so sophisticated in its courage,
Yes.
you know, and it does come across, the integrity of it, the concept comes across. The rest of it can come along, like it's less important, you know, the fact that this person has that, I don't keep an eye on that, you know.
Yeah. Awesome. The next category is artistic decision making. What role does craftsmanship play in your decision making process, especially when it comes to materials as sensitive or varied as paper and clay? So that actually goes along with what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Well, but you know, for the intention that's set, the craftsmanship is perfectly fine. It's not, doesn't even, if it didn't have integrity in terms of its craftsmanship, it wouldn't be able to speak as clearly as it's speaking. So that work's not about prowess, technical prowess.
Yep.
That person's less of a potter than they are sculptor, sculptural vessel maker. If that person wanted to be a potter, they need to come take some classes. you know?
Yeah, right.
But I don't think that they need to do that because it's not where they're headed, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Right?
Yes.
So, but to answer the question, I think during the show here, with inclusivity as one of our guiding principles, could give a little bit of leeway to craftsmanship, more so than you would at some other institutions for sure. But it still had to be, you know, we still did reject some work because it just wasn't ready, you know, it just wasn't
Yeah.
ready, which I think is a kindness to include it. Everybody is not necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, you need to have space for growing and learning, and if you're accepting everybody, those people don't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
Let's see. How do you weigh emotional impact or narrative against form and technique when jurying?
Could you say it again?
How do you weigh emotional impact or narrative against form and technique when jurying?
So understanding what all of that is like emotional and abstract.
Yeah, like this, if somebody's piece speaks to you, but the technique young lead over there. That's formulaic. They're very similar. All of her work looks like that. But those are so phenomenal.
It's like this. It's like
Yeah.
right. It's a pretty different, you know.
But wow, those are a standout in the show for sure. And the paper piece in everyone's soul. So that's pretty fascinating. Okay, how did you approach comparing works into very different materials when making curatorial decisions? Were there different standards or expectations based on each medium?
Okay, so
I don't think so.
No.
what's the first part of the question?
How did you approach comparing works into different materials?
Yeah, we didn't compare. We didn't do that.
Yeah.
And so curatorially, like once the work that we felt was strong enough to be in the show, then it was up to you and your team to.
Yeah.
Spot it.
And you did an amazing job. The room is so balanced. I mean, it's like kind of incredible.
Yeah, you found the dialogues between.
Between
That's my
pieces.
favorite part.
Yeah. Well, you're really good at it. Like you do.
So Christine, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So when you were thinking about this, did you think that you wanted 50% clay bricks, 50% paper, or you want that kind of balance?
Yes.
If possible.
Absolutely.
You want a
Yep.
even split.
Yep, and I think
It seems
think
like
we
you
did a
achieved-
pretty good
yeah,
job. I
yeah.
feel like we thought it was clay heavy, but once we got the pieces laid out and put the show together, it does feel very balanced. And like it is,
Yeah.
both materials really speak equally.
I think so.
But
yeah.
from an application point of view, do we have considerably more clay applicants than paper or no? I don't remember.
I think we did.
So,
I think we did.
that's interesting.
It is.
I see a lot of figurative.
Yeah.
So that's another interesting thing that happens. In my brain, when I thought, okay, a paper and clay show, it was so organic and sort of ephemeral and light. And to me, it was like natural colors and like very just earthy. And what kept coming in were these like bright colors. And I was like, oh no. What are we gonna do?
How am I gonna do that?
How am I gonna put these pieces with those pieces? And so it's always a challenge, especially with like a sculpture show or something. But what's interesting is that we have year after year. Last year's sculpture show, I don't know if any of you guys came to it, but there was so much figurative work, and there are years when there's no figurative work. And it's like somehow the universe like ebbs and flows with these artists where they're all doing the same thing, but they don't realize they're doing the same thing, or
Well, we say it's in the air.
it's in the air. Yeah, sometimes there's there's angry work, or sometimes there's a lot of animals, and you're like, where did all these animals come from? Right? There's animals in here. I mean, it's very interesting how that happens year after year, and what the different like, oh my God, this could be a themed show, and it's just a general sculpture show, but it could absolutely be a figurative show, or a color theory show, or whatever. So that's really fun every year watching what happens when people submit. All right, so advice for artists. What advice would you give artists who are consistently being rejected from jury shows? What should they reevaluate or not take personally?
They shouldn't take anything personally. is it takes a while to kind of drop in, you know? Because what's going on, I watch this in my studio, I watch students who come in, people who come in, and they haven't worked with clay before, and they start working with clay, and they're so far down, I use the expression rabbit hole, because I use rabbits as but they're so far down their own rabbit hole, but it hasn't surfaced yet. Stacy Vendetti is a case in point. The artist whose piece is over here in the corner. She's a student in my community, and when she first started, she would work on something for hours, and then she'd come over to me with it and just talk about some minute detail, and I knew that she was seeing way more than what was in front of us, you know? So meeting her with understanding, like, I'm just like watching gestation, you know, I'm watching a pregnancy. It's like, hasn't popped out yet, but she's already seeing it. And so, and then all of a sudden these things started to come out of her. It's like, it went from almost flat to dimensional, and they were so powerful, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, this one has been rejected probably more than it's accepted. I think it's something that over time, you know, I kind of have to learn to just sort of embrace the rejection. And something that goes, you know, a memory that goes back to when I was finishing up grad school, and some people that I was hanging out with at the time, we used to joke, because I think somebody had read about, you know, an artist that had written a rejection letter for their rejection. So we were all kind of joking about, you know, well, I'm gonna, you know, sort of like, I see your rejection and I one up you a rejection kind of thing. And so that has always stuck with me, because it's a way to sort of see it with a little bit of humor, and it sort of anesthetizes the sting a little bit. That's not to say that days later it still comes back and kind of like burns a little bit, but I mean, it's a little bit of a driving force. One foundational rule that I would not like break is that I don't abandon my work. So it's like I show up for my work no matter what. If it got rejected, it got rejected, and it probably does come down to some sort of you know, you know, it's something that I miss. I didn't take strong enough images. I didn't have a cohesive statement in the works that I submitted. I didn't, maybe technically I didn't somehow get the DPI right, you know, like, and so that just comes down to like, you know, doing it more frequently, submitting work more frequently, having other people look at my work before I send it out, and then, you know,
And sometimes it doesn't have to do any of that.
and sometimes it doesn't have to do it.
Sometimes it's really that the jury, maybe like, whatever your category is, if it's a show that goes across the media spectrum, and they have 5 jurors, they might not have had somebody who represented your category, and they might not have really understood what they were looking at. That's possible. And also, I do see sometimes whenever I've gotten rejected from the Philadelphia Museum show over the years, I would go to the show to see what were they looking, did they have you know, not a bias, but like was there evidence that they were heading in a direction that was like so not me? And that was always very helpful.
Yeah.
But there's a man named Arthur Gonzalez, who's a ceramic artist in California, and he wrote a book called The Art of Rejection. He published all of his rejection letters from all the way down to he illustrated the letters, and he circled the, unfortunately, he circled all the words that repeat. But his policy was for every rejection he got, he submitted 2 more. So, you know, just never, ever. The best thing you said was like, I don't ever give up on my work. I submitted a piece to a regional show a couple years ago, and it got rejected, and I knew it was a great piece. And it's not about me, it's about like, look, what am I doing in that studio? I'm like channeling, I'm facilitating something into form. And I really have so much faith in these things, so I submitted it again next year. Which definitely put some people's noses out of joint. We have a rule, I said, I don't think we do. I don't remember your rules. have to read further into it, and you do have to take it
Sure.
personally, and you do have to learn from it, and you do have to challenge yourself more, or take your work in a different direction, or, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes you have
use it for
to
education.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
But then it's like, that's why this is so powerful. It's like my teacher Bill telling me, I couldn't even argue for you because your images sucked, you know? Good to know.
Right,
Yeah.
but I think we were talking about something a little deeper too, which I think Lisa and I have already, like, we've already gone through that.
Yes.
mill, You know, like, we've already told, like, either, show up or get out, like, and so we show up. But I think what Christine's talking about, sometimes you gotta give yourself some tough criticism and
Yes.
some tough love, and you can't keep doing the same thing
Mhm.
over again and expect a different result.
Yeah.
No, it's true.
And sometimes you have to, like,
Ask for advice, ask
Yeah.
for feedback from somebody who you respect. If you have the experience of being rejected over and over again, I would ask for some.
and it doesn't mean that, you have to, going through academia makes you a professional artist. It does not. That's not it. But, going through critiques, having somebody look at your work, having somebody who is not going to agree with you is the best thing you can do, and I think, both probably heard maybe your own work or critiques of other people. I mean, critics can be harsh, like I had somebody tell me that a painting they thought was exciting was like, a TV dinner. Or somebody else for another critique said, that's what you did. You have to ask yourself, why does the world need another sculpture? I mean, these are really,
And
unkind things to hear, but either you kind of take it in and understand what that means and keep going, or you decide, no.
well, you just know if it stings, then there's some truth in it for you. For you.
Yeah.
If it stings, then there's something there for you. If it lands as neutral or like, I don't see that, then good. Let that one go.
Yeah.
We ultimately have to become our own critics.
It sounds a lot like what I heard a lot of in art school.
Art school is brutal.
We used to say, but it was tears of liberty.
Tough
And
love,
it could.
ooh.
That it wasn't
Yeah, but good intention.
It didn't have to be that way, because I've also had teachers over the years who knew how to teach with love. And there was nothing more powerful than that, and it was still moving, educational, transformative. It's just easier to
But
do
it's the
that.
maturity aspect.
It's a maturity thing. It's much easier to torch the field. And you still get the point across, but then the artists, who are typically sensitive souls, have to, grow a thicker skin and learn how to manage that.
But yeah, I think at the end of the day, like whichever direction, like if it's, harshly critical or criticisms or love, that it's about growth. There has to be growth there. So,
Yeah.
so seek out the people who you think are going to allow you to grow. So be honest.
Yes,
with them.
and don't just be an artist who's doing your own thing by yourself. I mean, you can be those things, but you need feedback. Like when we were in college or in art school, we had that constant criticism, and it might have hurt, but that's how we grew, and that's how we figured out what direction we wanted to take. And when you become an artist on your own, it's a very quiet and sort of lonely place for a lot of artists because they don't have that community or that feedback. So asking other people to talk to you about your work or showing them your work is really, really important. And getting other opinions and feedback, I think, is really important to artists.
But the other thing now is, in the old days, you could get a job as a teacher, as an art teacher. And that opportunity isn't there anymore. It just isn't. So we just came back from Japan, and we were with 13 people doing wood firing out in Tamba. With people from India and all these, kids, they've gone through university And now they have to figure out how to make a living because they have student loans. In India, I didn't know that it's hard to find a place for you to work out. It's very sort of controlled by one school and all these things you learn about other people. But that's it. The kids, I mean, parents fear their children being art majors.
Oh, I know, it's really.
And they'll try to talk them out of it. And
You have to have something to fall back on. Right?
yes,
Something
and
to
teaching,
share.
you know, I kept telling my mother, I was art therapy for a while there, you know. But it's the kind of thing like, yeah, the debt, you know, it's not, and then, you know, COVID came and, you know, we were helping young artists that we knew, we were buying pieces on, you know, in the because they were like literally starving. But it is like you watch, in the old days, people could become teachers and have a pension and health benefits, and now that's all gone. And I took a workshop with a famous Alfred alum, and he was saying how much he hates Ceramics Monthly. And I said, yeah, but you're a retired Alfred professor who's in the Smithsonian and everything now because of Alfred. And how would the kids get their work out there? Sometimes that's a lucky break. You know, so don't like the magazines or any of the social media because the opportunities aren't there.
Yeah.
They're just not there.
And
There should be.
we're creative people, so we have to think a little bit more broadly, too, because teaching jobs aren't, I mean, several hundred people apply for a teaching job, but people can do something completely unrelated for a team.
Yes.
Like a half-time job that would give them money.
Yes,
and
but they have to be able to navigate that and their parking and their housing.
I know, yeah, I do, I get it, and,
Like I can't believe on how little these kids are living.
Yeah.
You know, like, and they're in Japan for a year.
It's tough times.
They're living in the van, a car. You know, and going from, and there they work, like they're working in a studio. It's nonstop. It's just the work ethic is crazy.
yeah, it's not easy to watch, but it's passion, and it's meaning.
Yeah, it's free.
And it's, how much is enough? And
Right.
as long as you can eat, is that enough?
Yeah.
Because it's their choice, it's always a choice. That's why parents don't support their kids to go into art, and I've taught plenty of people who say, oh, if only I had started, because mostly it's people in middle life that come to me.
Yes.
And if only I had started earlier, I wasn't supported, or I had a teacher who discouraged me as a kid. And I just know that whatever day they walk into the studio is the best day that they could have walked into the studio, because there were so many other parameters keeping them from it. It's all fine. It's all fine. We're not all meant to make a whole life with play at the center. It's just not necessary, and for some people it's totally necessary. When I went through a divorce now several years ago, somebody said to me, another potter said to me, "Oh, I hope you'll still be able to make your work." I thought, what? I have no choice about that.
I'll be able to make my work more.
Just figure it out. Figure it out. There was never a doubt in my mind that I figured it out.
No, I think,
But I think it's also a generation of everybody gets a trophy. They're all so special, and they're not used to like, there's another thing going on there that they're not used to criticism.
Which is why it's good that we didn't just make sure that everybody got a piece of this show, because there were pieces, there were applications that really weren't ready, or they just weren't ready to be shown. So that rejection is critical feedback.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad you brought it up because it touches upon something that's, very, very deep, but I think it covers a lot of different territory, not just in the arts. I mean,
Music, so many things.
yeah, it touches upon so many things.
So many
It's
careers
sort
now
of-
are just so
It's sort of
expensive.
a systemic
Yes.
thing. It could be cultural, it could be because of other factors, but I think, every of the diverse ages in this room, and I think all of us can recall experiences through our lives where, we it was the same words being uttered, you know, I'm working 4 jobs just so that I could pay my tuition for my classes, or, you know, if only I had done this earlier, or I did a career, or, you know, I have a student now that's 79 years old, and I show up to meet with her for 2 hours every week, and it's just something that taps into her soul, and she's able to express something, you know. And there's stigmas on both sides too. Like you can find that part-time gig to support what it is you're doing, and then get stigmas from artists that come up to you and say, "Oh, you're not a full-time artist." So it's kind of, you know, excuse the language, but I mean, it's an F you no matter which way you turn.
So that's why being self-referential is so important.
Know yourself.
Yeah.
And not like taking your okayness from the outside world.
Yeah.
It's just you have to square with yourself at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It has to be a better word for rejection. We have to turn that one a little bit.
You know.
Why?
I don't know, it always, you know, you're a reject is there's a connotation to certain things.
Yeah, but I say go towards
Absorb
it.
it.
Go
Yeah.
towards it, not away from it. Because
You
yes,
have
you're
to
a
walk
reject.
through those feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we use the word non-accepted, you know,
Yeah.
unaccepted, or, thinking you said something really good. I lost it. I have one more, I have maybe 2, but we'll see how this question goes. One more question, it's advice for artists. It's 7 o'clock, if anybody needs to leave, that's fine. It says, how can artists make their submissions more compelling through documentation, statements, or titles? I read this as like, how important are the titles when we're looking
Not
at
for jury.
cases? I mean, they're sometimes a little bit.
For jury purposes,
Yeah,
we don't
then-
have the title necessarily.
No, we do. I always read the title.
We did.
Yep. But sometimes that gave us just enough information that we were like, oh, I understand what this artist is doing by the title. And then sometimes when it's an untitled piece, you're like, well, that doesn't help. You know, I need more information, or I need.
That, there's an artist whose work is over there.
In the alcohol.
Yeah, in the alcove.
Oh, yes.
And she was at the opening,
Yeah.
and I happened to notice that her title, Autopsy of a Ghost.
Right.
Autopsy of a Ghost. And it trivialized that piece for me. I was like, why would you?
I saw a flower. That piece was the floral to me from the moment I saw it, and still on the wall to me looks very floral and organic. And yeah, I was thrown off by that title also.
But I can also find Autopsy of a Ghost. I can find that too.
Yeah.
But it's just one little thing. So I had this great conversation with her, and she was really excited to be part of the show. She had a great enthusiasm and presence about her. And we talked about her title, and she said, you know, I wasn't so sure about that title, but so many people told me how much they loved it, that I used it. And so we're all subject to that kind of influence by the people that are around us. But that's why being self-referential is so important. And it doesn't mean that you become an isolated little island. No, but it has to work for you. It has to be a hell yes, or it's a no.
Right.
You know? Like, so untitled is better than pigeonholing something, I think. You know?
I feel like untitled, if it's a series, sometimes works. Untitled with a number or whatever, because it's more like a study or a continuation of something else. But if it's something that
That you told a story.
then I want part of that story to be told in the title. What about artist statements? Sometimes,
They're mostly for you. I think
Yes,
that they're so
absolutely.
clarifying and edifying for the artist to write, to actually have to
Yes.
put that down and to make it make sense. And you know, you write it
depends on what you're submitting your work for. So I think things like, maybe residencies, grants, they look at the artist statement. And there's a couple different artist statements that you can create, like there's the elevator pitch, which is a really good exercise to do, like just a 3-sentence statement, which is basically
Really hard.
is really hard
Yeah.
to do, which is
Yeah.
kind of, saying what it is, how it's done, and why it has meaning. And you have to sort of answer those 3 questions in 3 sentences. And I think the other thing that happens, and this is writing, and I think it's another thing that tends to follow artists. You mentioned something too about math, and I'm thinking, no, you don't have an artist bring from math. It's just your own rubric. Let's just follow that. But like artists get hit with a label that we don't know how to write. And I think writing is just something that evolves. You have to do it. You just have to do it. And in English, we get faulted for writing in the passive voice. So I mean, if anything, grammatically, if anything in your artist statement, you want to take the passive voice out. And that's where knowing people, finding at least 3 people that can read your statement is very helpful. So I think it just depends on what you're applying to.
I think that it really varies according to what you're applying to.
Yeah. And
But for this kind of thing,
for this thing, yeah.
it came in handy here and there, just to scan for content and clarification, but it didn't sway us one way or the other,
Right.
by its own virtuosity.
Yeah. Good. And then just one more, has being a juror either for this show or elsewhere, I know you haven't elsewhere, but you have you been a juror anytime? Has it influenced your own studio practice or your view of your own work?
I don't know about what
Well,
influence your studio practice or your view of your own work.
No, I mean, and even having done this for the first time, no, I didn't. I was fascinated by it, and when asked, and Lisa contacted me, and then I met you, and I mean, from the get-go, I was just so excited to be part of this.
So enthusiastic. I was like, I'm so glad I called him.
Right?
And
I
I
picked
picked
the
the
right
right one. And we hadn't spoken in a couple of years. Not because we were mad at each other, but our paths had crossed, and it was like, wow, it just dropped right into my head that day.
And I just wanted to absorb everything of the process and just learn as much from it as I possibly could. And that happened. And
Good.
yeah,
It's been so great. Yeah, it's been really wonderful.
yeah.
And to get to know in the words and what you guys are on about, what your mission is, and it's a really important community space. And that was evidenced easily the night of the opening. So many artists came out and they were so, to witness that experience for them was really helpful to me.
There aren't a lot of community spaces that can show this many artists in one space in one show. I mean, our shows are usually between 30 and 140 artists per show, which says something for the amount of talent in this area and how many artists we as an art center need to support and give opportunities to and show up for. So, yeah, I'm honored to be here, and I love this place. And everybody.
Also, the way you use the room is fabulous.
The way I use what, Carol?
Use the room, as I've always stated.
The staging
You know
is
exactly
always good.
Thank you.
impact.
Yeah.
And I was really stunned by the overall show, having spent 2 afternoons here hosting. I got to really know a lot of the work and see people I hadn't seen before, as well as seeing artists I knew who now have been using a different medium
Yeah.
and have improved as a
Yeah.
result. And that was shocking.
That's always fascinating too. 'Cause we do have artists that apply show after show, but you know, when they show up for a show that you've never seen them do play before, you're like, what?
Yeah,
Oh,
that
you're
was-
working
that
play
was
too?
very
Yeah.
exciting,
Yeah,
because
it
it's like you watch somebody grow.
Mhm.
And sometimes in the other medium, they were kind of on, and now they've discovered something that really
Yes.
is much more imaginative
Mhm.
and much more present and large and meaningful. And,
Right.
You know, that was always something that I think we enjoyed over the course of years. But this is a particularly fascinating show for me, in that I love both play and paper.
Mhm.
And you ask where can they join, and the answer is there's everything over. And you know, some of the imagery is quite fascinating.
Mhm.
And it was just
Good. Thank you, Carol.
Yes?
I was hoping that you would consider saying just a few words about a particular piece in the room. And I won't tell you if I love it or hate it.
Oh. Pick something.
No, I'm gonna tell you what it is.
Oh, you are gonna tell me.
I mean, critique you.
No, let me get the ground rules. You want to
Just say a few words.
say a few
He
words
wants
about
to show a piece.
particular piece and
Particular piece.
say a few words.
It's in the room.
And you're not going to say whether you
Love it or hate it.
love it or hate it, but you do possess that emotion to one or the other. You either love it or you hate it, right? This piece
Oh,
you're
yeah.
going to point out. You have a strong feeling about the piece you're going to point out.
Now, you see that I'm a designer, not an artist, so that I know this a little bit better. I don't know what the name of it is, but it's the ballerina octopus. What, I'd love to hear what you
Well,
see,
you know,
what you think.
this is
Wow.
this is somebody from my studio, so I know a lot about her as a person.
Oh, so you're biased already.
Well, that does, it gives me, it doesn't make me biased as a juror, but it makes me have a harder time doing what you're asking me to do, I think. Forget it, screw it, I'm just gonna tell you what I think. I'll tell you what I know about her. She's from Russia, and she started working in the studio a year and a half ago, and she started out working with
It's tact.
She started out working. You're gonna guard against people like me.
Yeah, you may not pick up the pieces, Lisa.
She started working with Russian fairy tales, and then they started to morph, which is such. I think that's what sort of spot interesting. Started working with Russian fairy tales or folk tales. So there's a point of departure. You know, it's like. Start anywhere. Just start anywhere. That spoke to her, so she started there. But to stay there and just tell stories around folk tales from your homeland might be kind of boring because it hasn't left room for your own creativity to come through. The breadcrumb trail. Pardon?
Has she done other pieces?
Yeah, she has two other pieces over there. One on that little cube on the wall, and one on a pedestal with the pink mask. Those are both her pieces too.
Wow.
So her technical skill is intermediate. She's still working out her technical understanding of ceramics. But she does not hold back in terms of her imagery. And I give her, she's very, very confident about what she's trying to do. You know, she has a strong internal life.
I'm thinking a lot about her.
Yeah, because I'm being honest with you, I know this person, so I'm not going to pretend that I don't know her and then talk objectively.
Well, I mean,
Well, I'm going to ask Deborah what she thinks, she doesn't know her at all.
yeah, so, I mean, I'm coming to it as a two-dimensional artist, teacher, and so I would come at, I mean, I'm intrigued by the piece and my eyes drawn to it. I see it as telling narratives, it feels like a narrative piece. And I recognize there's some formal things going on, so there's definitely balance in terms of the scale of the figure, the scale of the surface,
was here, I would maybe ask, like, she has these balanced pieces between, like, she's balanced the number of tentacles to, like, the number of legs on the stool, to the scale of the stool, to the scale of the figure. So, you know, how could she maybe elaborate on that a little bit, or maybe build on the gesture, the tentacle, or how the figure is. The quality of the clay, everything's matte. So there's a contrast in color, in surface. And then I would also, and then in terms of the narrative, I mean, it's just, it feels like there's another piece to grow out of this piece, that maybe this is a beginning statement, that, you know, do all the pieces have to say this size, or do they go bigger? So going back to the question we had earlier about like the formal elements and the expressive elements, this piece kind of ties into that really well, because she's very expressive. She's speaking with her heart first, and then she's finding the formal elements afterwards. So, you know, I think in terms of growth and developing the work, it would be a matter of like, you know, which one of those are you going to push a little bit more? I think maybe push the formal elements and the technical elements, so that her heart and her expressive part can like shine even louder. And that's how I come to the piece.
Anyone else have any questions or want to talk about a specific piece?
I was fascinated by the raccoon pieces that we've been looking at behind you, mostly because I know the process of raccoon, and I could never have associated figures like that with the material itself.
Right.
And it's actually, you know, somewhere between there's this happy baby imagery that comes through, almost like you're seeing something with regard to the joy of the figure, but then it's also a very Asian looking piece, and also a technique that is somewhat more in that historic vein, and I find them fascinating.
I do too, and that's Deborah, who came to my studio as a painter and an art educator, and within 2 years. I mean, you were talking to me a few minutes ago about somebody who starts to work in one material, but then they start in a different material, and all of a sudden it's like, wow.
That's crazy. That's
And that's what happened with Tyree. She is like a freight train of velocity of progression. And so when another student who has a raccoon kiln and wanted to introduce some people to raccoon, invited her, and then she showed me what she was taking, I said, did you understand the concept of raccoon? This is like baby, like, what are you?
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
She totally was down with it. She was fine. So she is a case in point. I was thinking of her when you were talking about, you know, you see somebody's work and you know their work, and then all of a sudden they're working in a different material. And there's a thing my teacher would call materiality. You know, there's a way that material transmits, has a part to play with a human being as the channel, if you will. You know, and for some people they touch play and it's love at first touch, and for other people it's no, you know. And so when you see that happen, that it goes right into somebody, it's just a beautiful thing to watch. It's really
this one in particular.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah. She gave a talk here a couple
Yes,
weeks
I
ago.
missed that.
Yeah, and she said that as a child she had a stuffed raccoon, because I asked her why she had the raccoon, the child's baby raccoon. She said as a child she herself had a stuffed raccoon. That's why she put it in the child's arms.
Yeah, these are very personal sort of growth pieces for this woman. They're they speak very deeply of her inner self.
But she, in a couple of years, totally exceeded my ability to. I mean, she teaches all the figurative stuff in my studio now. I'm not interested in teaching it at the moment, and she is better at it. at making figurative stuff. I shouldn't compare the two of us this way. Like, I have my own points of interest around it, and I feel very strong and confident in what I'm doing. But as far as realism or diversity of expression, and okay, Tyree, now make her lay down. Okay, Tyree, now give her a goat's head. Okay, Tyree, now, you know, and she would boom, 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 boom. So she's versatile and quick and flexible, and she's extremely unusual in this way. So,
Actually, I'm also surprised it survived the firing. Yeah.
Well, if you saw, there's a video on her Instagram of her actually firing it, and
Oh,
she
is it?
dropped it into it. Did you see?
No, I didn't
It was
see
she
but
was
I heard
using
about it.
tongs, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, and it drops, and she like straightens it up, and it survived. Like, yeah, it's funny.
Oh, wow.
It's one of her reels.
It's a place to go, but French time. Yeah. And so Tyree's teaching a couple of 10-week classes in the fall on animals in motion,
Yeah.
like the bird in flight, or the dog jumping, or she's got to keep it interesting for herself.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the
Great.
thing about teaching. In my studio, I won't only have teachers, and myself included, who are very passionate about what they're teaching. So it has to be alive for me in my own studio, or I don't want to teach it. It becomes forced march, or road thing, and that's much less potent, I think, than teaching something that you're very excited about.
Anybody else have any questions or anything
Answers?
you want to
Anybody have
discuss or
any
answers?
Yes.
Or if anybody wants a glass of wine before you leave, you're welcome. A
Thank
bottle
you
of
so
water
much.
is good. Should we keep doing them
Yes.
with every
That's
show?
terrific. I think so. I learned a lot, yeah.
Good.
Well, and it pertains to yours, but